What is going on, YouTube? And welcome back to episode 5 of the Good Schmidt Podcast. And today I'm going to be discussing what happened this past weekend in the wild card round of the NFL playoffs, as well as previewing the divisional round. So let's just start by reading off all the scores from all the games. Two of these games actually went to overtime, and they were really great. What an awesome start to the playoffs. The first game was the Bills and the Texans. Texans ended up winning in overtime, 22-19. The Tennessee Titans beat the New England Patriots 20-13. Minnesota Vikings took out the Saints in overtime, 26-20. And then the Seattle Seahawks beat the Philadelphia Eagles 17-9. So let's start with the Bills and the Texans. Let's just go through the scoring quarter by quarter. The Bills getting a touchdown in the first quarter, 2 field goals in the second quarter, a field goal in the third, and a field goal in the fourth. And then the Texans were shut out in the first half. They were down 13-0 at half. But then they had a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. Then they scored 11 in the fourth quarter and ultimately the game-winning field goal in overtime. So let's go through the drive summary here. The first drive of the game, the Bills actually scored on a trick play. John Brown threw a touchdown pass to Josh Allen. That started off the scoring. And then there was some punts by each team, then a field goal by the Bills, 10-0 at the end of one. Then a punt and by the Texans and a field goal in the second quarter. That's the end of the half. And then in the third quarter, each team traded a punt. The Texans fumbled, and then a field goal by the Bills. They went up 16-0. And then all of a sudden, things started to change. The tone of the game changed. J.J. Watt got a sack, and the Texans were able to drive down the field, and Deshaun Watson was able to lead his team for a touchdown, 16-8. They had the lead, and then the Bills fumbled, which led ultimately to a field goal by the Texans, which made it 16-11. Then a punt by the Bills, and then a go-ahead touchdown by the Texans. And you may have thought the Texans were going to win this game, because then both teams turned it over on downs. Then the Bills ultimately had a drive down the field to tie the game. And this game went to overtime. 2 possessions by each team, 2 punts, and then ultimately the game-winning field goal for the Texans. So really, this is quite a swing game. A lot of swings, a lot of momentum changes in this game. The Texans came out on top, ultimately because of a crazy play by Deshaun Watson where he avoided a sack and launched it downfield for a completion. That was ultimately what set up that field goal. Now let's look at the stats here. Bills did outgain the Texans. They had a lot more yards in the first half. So they had 425 to 360 yards. Passing yards, Buffalo at 253, Houston at 219. On the ground, the Bills also had the advantage, 172 to 141. And Houston had a little bit more average yards per play. 2 fumbles by each team, no interception, or a fumble by each team, 2 total. 7 sacks on Watson in this game, only 3 on Josh Allen. Buffalo was a little bit more efficient on third down, and the time of possession was about even as well. And there's the penalties. As far as the individual stats go, Josh Allen, 24 for 46, 246 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. John Brown threw that touchdown to Josh Allen on the opening drive. And then rushing, Josh Allen had 9 carries for 92 yards. And then Devin Singletary had a nice game. 13 carries, 58 yards. He averaged 4.5 a pop. And Frank Gore also chipped in with 22 yards on 8 carries. Singletary was the leading receiver in this game. He had 6 catches for 76 yards on 7 targets. John Brown, 4 for 50. Duke Williams was 4 for 49. And Cole Beasley was 4 for 44. As far as fumbles go, Josh Allen fumbled twice. He lost one of those. and Tre'Davious White forced a fumble. As well, there were a couple pat downs by Teron Johnson and Siren Neal. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And the Bills had two guys with 8 tackles, Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, who also had a sack. Trent Murphy had a couple sacks. Jerry Hughes had 3. He also had 3 TFLs. And then there is special teams. Let's take a look at the Texans stats now, and then I will give my final thoughts on this game. Deshaun Watson, very efficient game. He was 20 for 25, 247 yards and a touchdown pass. He also had 55 yards on the ground on 14 carries, and he ran one in. Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson also chipped in the running game, made contributions. More so in the third and fourth quarters they did. Then they didn't really contribute much in the first half. Hopkins, leading receiver, 6 catches, 90 yards on 8 targets. He really stepped it up in the fourth quarter. And then Kenny Stills, 4 receptions on 46 yards. We also had some catches by Darren Fells as well. Hopkins did fumble in this game, and he lost a fumble. They forced a fumble there. Whitney Merciless and Mike Adams also forced some fumbles, but there was only one lost fumble by the Bills in this game. And then Bradley Roby, Zach Cunningham, and Garrett Conley all had pat downs. Bradley Roby led the team with tackles with 7. And then as far as sacks go, Whitney Merciless had a sack. And then J.J. Watt had a sack and a tackle for a loss in this game. He had that key sack that ultimately jump-started a comeback, and then Kyan Fairbairn hit the game-winning field goal. He was 2 for 2 in the game. And yeah, that does it for the stats. Now, final thoughts on this game. I thought Buffalo played a really strong game in the first half. They just could not hold it together at the end. There were two defenders there that had Deshaun Watson, and then Deshaun Watson's like, I'm Superman. I'm going to get spin out of this sack and throw a completion. And that was ultimately what led them to the game field goal. But I just want to say props to J.J. Watt for coming back to this game. He had shoulder surgery 9 weeks ago. It was assumed that he was going to be out for the season, but his recovery went better than expected, and he was ultimately able to play in this game, having a huge impact. Like I said, his sack jump-started that comeback. So props to J.J. Watt for getting out there, helping his team win. And either way, I was going to be happy no matter who won this game. It was a really entertaining game to watch. And congratulations to Houston. They're moving on to Kansas City next weekend. Alright, transitioning on to the next game. Once it loads, there we go. We have the Tennessee Titans dethroning the New England Patriots, bouncing them in the wild card round here. Let's take a look at the drives and how they were able to do this. So in the first quarter, the Patriots started out with a strong drive, kicking a field goal, and then the Titans drove down the field, had an 80-yard, 12-play drive that took nearly 7 minutes off the clock. And Tannehill threw a touchdown pass to their tight end. So Tennessee had a 7-3 lead, and then the Patriots came right back. Edelman scored a touchdown, so they had the go-ahead touchdown there to take a 10-7 lead. On the second quarter, each team traded punts, and then the Patriots kicked a chip shot field goal. 13-7 is the score now, and then Derrick Henry just went off, scored a touchdown. 14-13, and then the Patriots turned it over on downs to end the second quarter. And then some more punts traded, and then there was an interception, a really bad interception thrown by Tannehill. Patriots got it back. I thought they were going to score, but they did not. They punted. Then, more punts traded. And ultimately, there was a pick 6, and that was the end of the game. I mean, a really boring second half offensively, some really strong defense. Or in the fourth quarter, really boring. Well, overall, it was boring the second half. But the Titans were able to hold their own in this game. They really were. They were able to hold their own. Let's look at the team stats now. Patriots did outgain the Titans 307 to 272 in total yards. Passing yards, they had a ton more. 209 to only 71. You're probably wondering where the heck did Tennessee get all of their yards? They had them on the ground. 201 rushing. New England was held to 98. Patriots had a little bit more as far as average yards per play. One fumble lost by the Patriots, and then an interception for each team. Only one sack in this game, which is surprising. Tennessee was 50% efficient on third down to 38% for New England. And Tennessee controlled the clock in this game. And yeah, there's penalties. Let's look at the individual stats. Tannehill did what he had to do. 8 for 15, 72 yards, touchdown and a pick. He didn't really have to throw the ball much because of Derrick Henry, who was their rock in this game. He was the bowling ball that analysts have called him. He rushed for 182 yards on 34 carries and a touchdown. 5.4 average. He was the star of the game. He really was. Then as far as receiving goes, Anthony Fursker had the touchdown catch, and he had 2 receptions for 23 yards. Derrick Henry had 1 reception for 22 yards, so that added to his all-purpose total. My goodness. And A.J. Brown only had 1 catch in this game. Corey Davis didn't even have a catch, so that was interesting. Tannehill fumbled a couple times, but the Titans were able to recover them. And let's see, Joshua Kalu had a fumble recovery for the Titans. And then Logan Ryan had the pick 6 for Tennessee and a pat down. Tremaine Brock had 2 pat downs, and then we had some other pat downs as well. Adoree Jackson played a really strong game. He had a couple pat downs. Leading tackler for Tennessee was Rashard Evans with 6. He had 3 TFLs. Kevin Byard had 5 tackles as well. And then I gotta mention the punter because he was huge in this game. Brett Kern, 6 punts, 45.8 average, and his long was 58. So let me just talk a little bit about the special teams here. So there was one drive late in the game. I think it was in the fourth quarter. Tennessee was punting. They were around the 40-yard line, and they took a delayed game. And they took a false start because apparently by rule you can't take 2 delay games because there'll be a 10-second runoff. And then the Patriots jumped off sides, and then they finally punted, and Brett Kern was able to pin them deep. So I thought that was a really weird strategy by Kevin Rabel and the Tennessee Titans special teams. But this weird strategy ended up working. I mean, they wasted a ton of time. I thought that was going to come back to bite them, but the Patriots weren't able to do anything really in the second half. So props to the Titans for that special team strategy. Let's look at what the Patriots did. Let's look at their ugly stats. So Brady was 20 for 37, 209 yards and a pick. Not very good. Sony Michel, 14 carries, 16 yards. James White only had 1 rush for 14 yards. A couple carries for Edelman there. There was several guys involved with the running game. And as far as receiving goes, your leading receiver is James White. 5 catches for 62 yards. So the Patriots really did not use their wide receivers, or their wide receivers were not open. I mean, it was just a pathetic performance overall by New England offensively. The receivers did nothing. Couple of fumbles, one by Edelman, one by White. James White ended up losing the fumble. Let's see, Kyle Van Noy forced the fumble. And then Duron Harmon had that interception on that terrible pass by Ryan Tannehill. And then Dante Hightower was the Patriots' leading tackler with 8. There was only 1 sack in the game. Kyle Van Noy had it. And then there is special teams. So my final thoughts on this game are the Patriots' offense was pathetic. I couldn't believe they couldn't get anything going. The Titans had their screen game sniffed out by the second half, because that was pretty much their strategy, was just throw short passes and screens. Didn't work. I think they should have ran the ball more because Brady was not playing very well. Tennessee was getting pressure and covering well all game long. Or Tennessee wasn't really even getting pressure that much. They were just very disciplined in coverage all game. So, yeah, props to the Titans. They knock off the Patriots, potentially ending their dynasty. At least for the moment, they put they put the brakes on the Patriots dynasty. So credit to them. I was very happy about that. Let's move on to the first NFC game here. In this one, the Vikings actually took out the Saints. So let's take a look here at the drive summary. There was a fumble to start the game, which led to a Saints field goal. Props to the Vikings for keeping the Saints out of the end zone. That was huge. Their defense stood tall. And then Minnesota tied the game with a field goal. And then a couple of punts there. Some more punts. And then Alvin Kamara had a touchdown, leading to a 10-3 lead for the Saints. And a field goal by the Vikings to make it 10-6. Drew Brees threw a terrible interception into coverage. That was bad, which led it to a Dalvin Cook touchdown, go-ahead touchdown. The Saints missed a field goal right before half. They had a big return that set that up, but ultimately they were unable to convert on the field goal. And third quarter, we had some more punts. Another touchdown by Dalvin Cook. They were up 20-10. Some more punting. Then in the fourth quarter, the Saints finally had a big drive. Drew Brees threw a touchdown pass, 20-yard touchdown pass to Taysom Hill. Saints were now down by 3. We had a punt, a fumble. My goodness, Saints. Another fumble. Yeah, my apologies. For some reason, my screen decided to go blank. So let's get back to where I was here. Yeah, the Saints fumbled, then the Vikings punted, and then the Saints drove down the field to tie the game at 20. And we had our second overtime game in the postseason so far. And the Vikings won the toss. And they scored a touchdown. That was the game, yeah. So the Saints really can't blame the refs in this game. Their offense sputtered throughout the game. They had a hard time even getting anything going throughout this game. Especially in the first half. They were struggling. They didn't even score They didn't even score in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, they didn't even score. No. In the third quarter, the Saints didn't even score. They just struggled on offense throughout the game. The Vikings played a really strong game, I have to say. Total yards, Minnesota had 362 to 324 for the Saints. Passing yards pretty much even there. The Vikings outgained the Saints in rushing, 136 to 97. Minnesota did a nice job stopping the run. Average yards per play, 6 to 4.9 for Minnesota. And then a fumble for each team. It's kind of been a theme of this video. One interception by the Saints, 3 sacks per team. Minnesota was a lot more efficient on third down, and they also controlled the clock in this game. That's also been a theme. If you control a clock in a postseason game, you can win. So the Vikings were able to do that. Kirk Cousins is very efficient in this game. 19 for 31, 224 yards and a touchdown. Dalvin Cook had 94 yards and 28 carries, 2 touchdowns. Madison chipped in with 20 yards on 5 carries. Then receiving, Adam Thielen had a huge game. 7 catches, 129 yards. Kyle Rudolph had the game-winning touchdown. And then Stephon Diggs only had 2 catches. That was a bit surprising. But Adam Thielen made up for the lack of targets to Diggs. He only had 3 targets. Diggs did. Adam Thielen did lose a fumble, but he still had a huge game. He made up for it. Danielle Hunter forced a fumble, and then Jalen Holmes recovered a fumble. Anthony Harris had a 30-yard interception return. Got some pat downs here. One by Sadejo Rhodes, who was playing with a pinched nerve. And then Danielle Hunter also had a pat down. Harrison Smith had 8 tackles in the game. And then Anthony Barr had 7 with a TFL. And then there are the special teams. As far as the Saints go, Drew Brees, 26 for 33, 208 yards, touchdown and a pick. And Taysom Hill threw a 50-yard bomb. Interesting. Taysom Hill on the ground had 4 carries for 50 yards. He was actually the leading rusher. Alvin Kamara only had 21 yards in this game. They shut him down. Michael Thomas was the Saints' leading receiver, 7 catches for 70 yards on 8 targets. Jared Cook had 5 receptions for 54 yards. And then Taysom Hill had 2 catches for 25 yards. So he had a great all-purpose game. He was a majority of the Saints' offense, aside from Michael Thomas and Jared Cook helping out. Drew Brees lost a fumble. He hadn't lost a fumble all year long. The Jackrabbit, Janoris Jenkins, forced a fumble, and Von Bell also recovered a fumble in this game. And then there are the pat downs. Demario Davis and Shai Tuttle each had 2. We had some other pat downs here as well. Marcus Williams, the guy, led the team in tackles with 5, along with Trey Anderson. And Cam Jordan and Trey Henderson had sacks, and that was it. Will Lutz was 2 for 3 on his field goals, and yeah, there is the special teams. Deontay Harris had a nice game, kick return game, 4 receptions for an average of 33.3 yards. So overall in this game, I would say the Saints played down to their competition. They should have played a lot better, but they did not. Credit to the Vikings game plan. They were able to stifle the Saints' offense, and they played a really strong offensive game, and were able to pull this out in overtime. As far as the game-winning touchdown, I do not think it was pass interference. It seemed perfectly clean to me. I really didn't want to see the Vikings fans get robbed again. Even though I don't like the Vikings, I didn't want to see them get robbed again. Sorry, Saints fans, your team just needed to play better. You didn't play well enough today. So the Vikings are moving on to the next round. They're going to take on the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara. Here is our 4th and final wildcard weekend matchup. The Seahawks took out the Eagles. I'm not going to spend as much time on this one, but I will spend a little bit of time on it. Let's just go through all of the scoring drives here. Seattle started the game off with a field goal for 49 yards. They also actually had a field goal blocked in this game. And what drive was it? Let's look at that. Let's actually look at that. On their second possession, they actually had a field goal blocked. So that was interesting to see. And then the Eagles tied the game with a field goal. They drove down the field, scored, and then Marshawn Lynch had a touchdown run, 10-3 lead. Then the Eagles settled for another field goal, another touchdown by Seattle, field goal by Philly, and there was no scoring in the 4th quarter. And as far as stats go, Seattle had 100 more yards than Philly. Passing yards, they destroyed Philly. The Eagles had to run the ball a lot because Carson Wentz went down with a concussion in the first quarter. Yeah, he went down in the first quarter. And 40-year-old Josh McCown had to come in. That's why the passing yards were down. Average yards per play, Seattle had way more. And no turnovers in this game. And 7 sacks by the Seahawks defense. Seattle was very efficient on 3rd down. But Philly actually controlled the clock, interestingly enough. I'll get to why they were unable to win this game. And then a lot of penalties by the Seahawks. So let's start with Seattle's individual stats here. Russell Wilson was 18 for 30, 325 yards and a touchdown. He also had 9 carries for 45 yards rushing. And then not too many rushing yards from the running backs. Seattle actually is down at 3 running backs. 3 of them went on IR. So they're down to Travis Homer, Marshawn Lynch, and Robert Turbin, who didn't even play. They all contributed. Homer and Lynch contributed a little bit. Marshawn did have that 5-yard touchdown run that I mentioned earlier. That was cool to see. His 2nd touchdown in as many weeks. So good for beast mode. Then receiving wise, DK Metcalf, 7 catches, 160 yards, and a touchdown, and ultimately he had a game-sealing touchdown. He had a massive game. He was targeted 9 times, caught 7 passes. So, I mean, that was huge. Huge game for him. Yardage-wise, touchdown-wise. Tyler Lockett had 4 catches for 62 yards on 8 targets. And then David Moore also chipped in with a couple of catches as well. Then we had a couple fumbles in this game, but Seattle recovered them. A couple of pat downs by Cody Barton. And then Bradley McDougall led the Seahawks with 8 tackles. Bobby Wagner had 6. And then let's see, Clowney, KJ Wright, and Cody Barton all had sacks. We had a lot of TFLs in this game. Quentin Jefferson had a couple of sacks. Rashad Green also had one as well. And then there is the special teams. Moving over to the Eagles now, who played 2 quarterbacks. Carson Wentz only threw 4 passes for 3 yards, and then he got hurt, unfortunately. That was too bad. So 40-year-old Josh McCown, who is the backup, had to come in. He played his heart out. My goodness, 18 completions, 24 attempts for 174 yards. And then Miles Sanders led the way in rushing, 16 with 69 yards. Boston Scott had 25. And as far as receiving goes, Dallas Goedert, 7 catches for 73 yards. And Zach Ertz chipped in. He was playing injured, but he chipped in as well. And then we had quite a few fumbles that were recovered by Philly. Cravion LeBlanc had a couple of pat downs. And Malcolm Jenkins led the Eagles in tackles. And then Jake Elliott hit on all of his field goals. And there is punting and the rest of the special teams. So ultimately, the reason the Eagles did not win this game is because they could not score in the red zone. They had to completely change their game plan with Wentz going out. They were able to drive down the field several times, but they kept on settling for field goals. They settled 2 times. They turned it over on downs several times. So that was really unfortunate. They would have had a chance in this game. Their defense played well enough, even with all the injuries. This is a serious injury bowl on both sides. Lots of injuries in the game and even before the game. Before the game, both of these teams are coming in with a lot of injuries. And ultimately, the team that was a little healthier and that had the better QB came out on top in Seattle. So, sorry Philly didn't win, but they had too many injuries. I think they would have had I think they would have maybe had a better chance at winning if Wentz was playing. That's a huge what if. Ultimately, the Seahawks win this game and are moving on to Lambeau to take on the Green Bay Packers.